Hi, I'm Alex from Rtings.com. The holidays are creeping up again, which means you're either hunting for a new TV for yourself, your family, or, let's be honest, to make your pet watch nature documentaries in 4K. Whatever your plan, I'm here to help you find the TV that actually fits your room and your habits without wasting your time on buzzwords. We've tested a mountain of TVs over the years, including over 30 just this year. All that experience taught us that you need to start with two simple questions. 1. How bright is your space most of the time? If there's lots of daylight or lamps, you'll want higher sustained brightness and good reflection handling so the image doesn't wash out and you can actually see what's happening on your TV. And 2. How wide is your seating? If people often sit off to the side, you'll benefit from wider viewing angles, which is an OLED specialty. Oh, you're gaming? Then add low input lag, fast response time, VRR, and 4K high refresh support. Love movies? Then you want deep blacks, clean tone mapping, and accurate HDR PQ tracking, so dark scenes stay dark and bright highlights pop where they're supposed to, not everywhere all at once. With that in mind, let's get right into the 2025 winners. The best TV in 2025 is the Samsung S95F. If your budget is flexible and you want one screen to do everything brilliantly, like movies, sports, and gaming, you should buy the S95F. It's a QD-OLED, so you're getting pixel-level contrast for those truly inky blacks and outstanding color volume for show-stopping HDR highlights. What pushes it over the top in 2025 is day-to-day versatility. The S95F's matte-like treatment on the screen is extremely effective at knocking down mirror-type reflections, and its SDR brightness is genuinely strong. So you can watch the Sunday game with windows open and it still looks punchy instead of hazy. At night, HDR looks cinematic and clean. You'll notice that shadow detail stays intact without lifting the entire scene, and specular highlights sit right on top of those deep blacks instead of smearing into a gray haze. Motion looks crisp for sports with minimal artifacts when you enable light processing. And if you're sensitive to stutter on 24p films, the S95F gives you just enough smoothing control to keep movement fluid without making everything look like a soap opera. If you're a gamer, you're more than covered. 4 HDMI 2.1 inputs live on Samsung's Slim 1 Connect box, which also keeps your wall mount tidy, and the set supports high refresh 4K plus all the major VRR formats. HDMI 4 VRR, FreeSync, G-Sync, it does it all. Input lag is very low, and because it's OLED, pixel response is basically instant. So 120Hz performance modes and 165Hz gaming on PCs feel exactly as snappy as you'd expect. If you own a PS5 Pro or a higher-end PC, this panel lets the hardware flex. Want an alternative? Consider the LG G5 OLED instead, especially for people who want Dolby Vision, prefer LG's image processing, or want blacks that stay deep in a room with the lights on. Just note that the G5 shows dithering, which shows up as diagonal lines and snow-like noise. While the lines are only noticeable from up close, the noise can be noticed at regular viewing distances. Your mileage will vary, but it's something to keep in mind as it could bother you. For that reason, the Samsung is the safer pick for most, but the G5 is a great alternative. If you want most of the S95F's OLED magic for less money, the Samsung S90F is the one you should shortlist and is our pick for the best upper mid-range TV. In a dim or moderately lit room, you'll see the same strengths that matter: deep blacks, high color volume, and wide viewing angles that keep faces from looking dull when you're off to the side. It isn't as bright in SDR as the S95F, and it uses a glossy surface rather than the S95F's anti-reflective approach, so direct reflections are more noticeable during daytime. If you can temper the light a bit, or if you mainly watch after sunset, you'll be thrilled by how polished this looks. Gamers, you still get multiple HDMI 2.1 ports, 4K high refresh rate support, and VRR. Input lag stays low, and motion response is lightning fast thanks to those lovely OLED pixels. This set does everything, especially if you want to experience 120Hz performance modes and keep motion clarity without turning your living room into a cave. Although, like all OLEDs, the TV does benefit from pitch black conditions. It just doesn't require them. An alternative? Well, there's the LG C5, for the same reasons as the G5, Dolby Vision and LG's processing. Unfortunately, it has more of the same issues as the G5, so be aware that there's dithering on this TV. Still, if you want Dolby Vision for movies and you prefer LG's WebOS ecosystem, the C5 is a great counterpick to the S90F. Our pick for the best mid-range TV is the TCL QM8K. If your room sees a lot of daylight and you want a bright, punchy screen that still looks correct at night, you should grab this TV. We slotted it here specifically because it balances huge HDR brightness with competent local dimming and more faithful HDR PQ EOTF tracking than the flashier competitors in this range. Translation, the QM8K is bright enough to sparkle in a living room during the day, but when the lights go down, black levels don't just float upward and turn everything into gray soup. Dark scenes keep their shape, highlights still pop, and shadow detail doesn't vanish. Color is vivid without leaning into neon, although the TV sure can look neon if you want it to. It has the color range for it. Motion stays crisp for sports thanks to strong sustained brightness and responsive pixels for an LCD. And if you're into gaming, you get the high refresh options and VRR support you actually use. The big story here is that TCL found the right mid-range trade-off. A good balance of mini LED brightness and HDR that respects the content creator's intent. That combination is rarer than you'd think this year. If you still can't get enough of that OLED magic, but you'd prefer something cheaper than the two Samsungs we just recommended, consider the LG B5, a good counterpick to the QM8K for those who want a wide viewing angle and that sweet instantaneous response time for gaming. You give up full screen brightness and some daytime punch, but if you can control your room's light a bit, the B5's perfect blacks and clean motion are gorgeous for movies and story-driven games. Oh, and as an added perk, unlike the C5 and G5, the B5 doesn't suffer from any dithering. Nice! Up next is our best lower mid-range TV, the TCL QM7K. If you're chasing value but still want a TV that looks premium in a real living room, the QM7K is your move. You get mini LED at a price where many competitors are still edge-lit. The result? Strong HDR brightness, convincing black levels, and local dimming that actually works. Yes, it's a VA-type LCD, so the best seat is still front and center, but you can slide a couple of chairs off axis without the image collapsing. That's what we're talking about, TCL. In tough HDR torture test scenes, like with bright objects next to deep shadows, you will see some haloing, but it's surprisingly tame for the money. If you watch a lot of moody, low APL HDR, that matters more than chasing a few extra peak nits. The QM7K stays closer to the standard, so your movies keep their depth and mood. Gamers get high refresh modes, VRR, and low input lag. There's even a high frame rate 1080p at 288Hz option that competitive players love. It's a lot of premium performance for the dollar, and a realistic sweet spot for family rooms that swap between Netflix, sports, and console games all week long. The obvious alternative is the Hisense U75QG. It's brighter on paper if you absolutely want daytime pop, but less refined. The Hisense's PQ EOTF tracking is quite poor, with HDR often appearing too bright. Its pixel response time is also much slower, making for some pretty blurry gaming compared to the TCL. If you care about movies at night, you'll typically prefer the TCL. Still, if you want the most brightness possible for your buck, the Hisense has it in spades. If you want to keep the price down, but don't want your TV to feel sluggish or outdated, the TCL QM6K is your pick for the best budget TV. It brings mini LED to the true budget tier, which means legit solid brightness and respectable contrast at a price that used to only buy you edge lit. HDR isn't as nuanced as the QM7K, so expect more blooming and some clipped highlights, but it's balanced enough that nighttime movies don't look washed out. And daytime SDR holds itself together well enough to handle some glare when watched in brighter rooms. Like most budget VA panels, the viewing angle is narrow, so plan your seating more in front than on the sides. Gaming is where this TV punches above its weight. You get HDMI 2.1 where it counts, low input lag, VRR, and high refresh options, including a very responsive 1080p at 288Hz mode, just like on the QM7K. That combination makes menus feel snappy, shooters precise, and racing games smooth. If you're upgrading from a basic 60Hz TV, the QM6K feels like jumping a generation. Looking for an alternative? You've guessed it. It's the Hisense U65QF. Just like with the U75QG, this model is brighter but less refined than the QM6K. If you're constantly battling daylight, you might like that extra punch, but its HDR accuracy is far weaker. PQ tracking runs way bright, and motion looks a bit smeary compared to the TCL. If nighttime movies and responsive gaming matter, stick with the QM6K. But if you're looking for maximum brightness, you know what to do. Alright, let's recap our picks. If you want one screen that covers everything, movies that look truly cinematic, sports that stay crisp in a bright room, and gaming that feels instantaneous, buy the Samsung S95F. If you want a cheaper OLED that still feels premium, the Samsung S90F is the smart step down, with LG C5 as the Dolby Vision friendly counterpick. In the mid-range and below, TCL's mini LED lineup wins 2025. It mixes the brightness you need for daytime with HDR tone mapping that doesn't nuke your blacks at night, and that's exactly where some Hisense sets stumble this year. Want every chart and test photo behind these picks, plus price tracking and firmware notes? You'll find all of them on our site. There's a link in the description below. Thanks for watching, drop your questions in the comments, and tell us what you're upgrading from. We want to know. Until next time, I'm Alex from Rtings.com, where we help you find the best product for your needs.